Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to my little Game of the Year show for 2024. How's everybody on Twitch chat doing today? But yeah, we are gonna go over a few categories, and then towards the end, I'm gonna talk about some of my favorite games to come out last year. Before we get too far into this, I want to thank all of you. So whether you've watched me on Twitch, YouTube, supported any of my content, yeah, thank you guys very, very much, because, yeah, I can't do this without you guys. But yeah, 2024 was a very interesting year in gaming. We, of course, had 2023, which was just an incredible year. It had some games that will go down in history as some of the best games ever made. And so there were some people who kind of thought 2024 was going to be a little bit of an off year. 2024 still had a ton of amazing games, but I think 2023 overall was still probably better. But yeah, I think 23 will probably go down as just overall like one of the best years in gaming we've ever seen. And then now that we're looking at 2025, 2025 has a lot of question marks, but could potentially be another just insane year, especially if everything comes out that is supposed to come out and doesn't get delayed into 2026. So, yeah, should be quite interesting. But yeah, to sort of kick things off here, as we've done in years past, I've got some categories that we are going to take a look at. We have our art categories. We've got best music soundtrack, favorite writing, best game you didn't play, best voice acting, best sound design, and then most anticipated game for 2025, aka this year. So yeah, if you guys are ready, we'll get right into it. Chat, you guys ready? Cool. But yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the art categories, and I have two of them. There's a lot of other content creators or whatever, and they'll do like one art category. In my opinion, you should split it up. You should have an award basically for artistic and one for technical. So we're going to go ahead and start with artistic, and the difference between the two, at least in my mind, is a best graphics technical category is a game that is going for realism. And then artistic, I would say, is a much more broad category because anything can be artistic. And it would be just the game that caught my eye as having like the best like overall artistic style art. So, yeah. So, yeah. For best graphics artistic, I am going to go with Dragon Age: The Veilguard. This is a game that actually had a little bit of controversy regarding the art style, but one of the really interesting things about the Dragon Age series in particular is every game has had a different art style, different mechanics, different combat, and so it's just, yeah, every game is different, but yeah, they went with a very interesting art style for this one. It looks absolutely fantastic. In particular, the character models and the hair visually, the hair animations, probably some of the best hair we've ever seen in any video game, period, which is really, really cool. But no, the game just has a fantastic style to it, and I'm sure we'll talk about Dragon Age a little bit more as we go into this video. So I think I'll stop right there for that one. But no, great art style for the Veilguard. Absolutely love what they did with that one. And then for the number 2, the best graphics technical, I feel like this shouldn't be a big surprise for any of you who are watching this. And that would be this year we had a game come out that will go down in history, or at least current history, as one of the best looking games ever made. and that is going to be Hellblade 2: Senua's Saga. In my mind, there's 2 games right now that are tied for the best looking game ever made, and it's this game and Last of Us Part 2. Yeah, the Ninja Theory devs are just 100% on top of their game when it comes to graphics and when it comes to a few other things that are done in this particular series. But yeah, I kind of want to play Hellblade 2 again just so I can just look at that game again. And then again, for some other reasons that we'll get into here in a little bit. But actually, I think here in this shot right here, I'm like looking at the ground and looking at the puzzles and stuff like that. You see like the reflection happening, and it's like, man, this terrain is like insane on how good it looks. It's also a game that uses, you know, that letterbox style. It just does an absolutely amazing job with its presentation and textures, and yeah, pretty insane visually if you've not seen it. It's pretty bonkers. Pretty bonkers. There we go. Next up, we are gonna move on over to Best Music Soundtrack. And again, this one was pretty easy for me. And it is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It is very hard to nail that John Williams music style. And I guess if you're someone who doesn't know, you should like look up John Williams' resume. And you're probably going to be stunned by all of the themes that he has created over the last 30, 40-ish years. Like literally some of the best movie soundtracks ever made were all created by him. Of course, everybody knows Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but you look at Harry Potter and Jaws and Back to the Future, and the list just goes kind of on and on and on and on. It's the Superman theme, and yeah. So the developers of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle did an incredible job of actually recreating that Indiana Jones soundtrack, and not only did they use original pieces, but they used new pieces as well, sort of keeping with that theme. So yeah, they did just an incredible job at least matching the music that kind of went along with everything that game was representing. So yeah, hell of a job on that. Very, very, very good. All right, next up, actually, I should just leave Indiana Jones on the screen here for this next one. So yeah, the next one is Best Writing. And again, for me, it goes back to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And something I talked about in the playthrough of this game is actually very similar to what I just said about music. Writing an Indiana Jones story is very hard to do. You could argue the point that they couldn't even do it in the last 2 movies, right? And when Machine Games went to make Indiana Jones, the video game here, there's like a lot of different pillars that you have to have in place, and they were able to actually nail every single one of those pillars. You know, visually it looks great. They nailed all that. The themes of Indiana Jones, the writing, the storytelling, the music, like they just absolutely nailed what they were trying to do with this game. And I've actually seen some people online say that you could actually take all the cutscenes from this game and essentially splice it all together, and it's like an awesome movie to watch. I feel like you'd have to mix in like a little bit of gameplay to explain a few things, but yeah, it'd be a really good, solid, multi-hour movie just to kind of sit back and watch. So yeah, the only other like games out there that were able to kind of write a story similar to Indiana Jones would be like the Uncharted series. But yeah, just in general, it's very hard to do. And it's very hard to match that Spielberg, that like 80s Spielberg, the 80s Lucas, sort of like, again, style and theme and all that, and they were absolutely able to nail it in this game, which is absolutely fantastic. Next up, we're going to talk about the best game that I didn't play. And I did cheat on this a little bit. I actually have two games that I want to briefly talk about. So the best game, or games, that I didn't play. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is actually this one, Stellar Blade. So they did release a demo for this. And I thoroughly enjoyed the demo. You know, it's basically like a Souls-like, and I thought it was really fun, but just, yeah, never got around to playing the full version when it came out. I know a lot of people that did play it, really enjoyed it. It really wasn't up for any other, like, Game of the Year anything. So I feel like it just kind of fell off on a lot of people's lists, but yeah, a lot of people really enjoyed it. And the second game that I'm going to mention, I don't have a video for this one, but Metaphor ReFantazio, which is the next game from the Persona devs, came out. That game actually was up for a lot of Game of the Year awards across the industry. But I'm a big fan of Atlus. I'm a big fan of the Persona games. And again, that was another one where they released like a demo or an early access or something that I did play a little bit, but it kind of came out at a bad time where, again, those games are like over 100 hours and it's just really hard to fit that into the schedule. And yeah, I couldn't fit it in. So yeah, kind of a shame. Maybe I'll get around to it at some point. But honestly, I'd like to stream Persona 5 Royal for you guys first, and then I don't know, maybe at some point down the road we can get into Metaphor. So yeah, we'll have to see. All right, next up is favorite voice acting. You guys can probably guess what this is gonna be. I should have just reorganized this to have all three Indiana Jones right in a row, but favorite voice acting, Troy Baker's Indiana Jones. Yeah, he absolutely nailed it. And it's not the first time that one of Harrison Ford's characters has been used in the game. You know, he's been in like Star Wars games and stuff like that. And I don't know who they've used in the past, but I feel like whoever they've used in the past has also done like a really good job. But yeah, at least for this game and Indiana Jones, Troy Baker absolutely nailed it. And that again goes into everything I was mentioning before about they had to nail everything for this game, and they pretty much did. There were like a couple of small moments where you could hear more of Troy's voice than like a Harrison Ford voice. And when you're trying to copy a voice, that's definitely difficult, instead of like, oh, I'm jumping into a new game and I get to create the voice or whatever, right? Yeah, but you have to try and match a voice of, you know, somebody else who's out there, and yeah, it's just very, very hard to do. So I will also say that, and I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head, but yeah, the gal who is Senua in Hellblade, also, she's incredible in everything that she does. Yeah, always enjoy her performance as well. And speaking of Hellblade, we'll go back to our next category, and that is Best Sound Design. And to me, there's no competition. Yeah, Ninja Theory is one of the kings of sound design right now. And if you haven't heard Hellblade, you need to go and just watch some gameplay of it. Yeah, what they do with the sound design, especially in the second one, is absolutely incredible. when you have all the voices that are literally like spinning around you. And in this game, they also did directional music and stuff like that. And I don't think any other game has ever done that before. Usually you have a soundtrack playing and it's like in both ears and it'll go up and down and do all that stuff. But yeah, all kinds of like directional sounds and voices and everything that they do in this game is just absolutely insane. Hold on, I wonder if I can do this here real quick. Hold on. I don't know if we're in a part that we're gonna hear anything or not, other than the rain. Hold on, I gotta check something here. What am I checking?
The sea talking away, just like your hopes.
You don't need to listen to him. You know this now. Listen to us. You know better. Find the survivor. He is trying to trick you. We need to help the survivors.
Whenever the evil guy voice talks, I don't want to listen to me. Old me is no, we don't listen to old me. But that's like a little sneak peek of kind of what I was talking about. But yeah, incredible sound design for that game. Okay. And then I think our last category is most anticipated game for 2025. This one's actually kind of a hard one because there are a lot of really cool games that are coming out. One being like Civilization. I'm a major Civilization fan. Love that series. Put hundreds and hundreds of hours into that series like every year. But to me, there's one game coming out that's a bit more of a wild card. There is a series that I grew up on. And a series that had 4 incredible games before it was sold to Ubisoft. And then Ubisoft essentially just made a studio or a couple studios just churn out a couple of games, and they were just terrible. And some of the reports that came out about those terrible games was that Ubisoft put them on a timetable. We know that one of them released with unfinished cutscenes, and it's just a bad deal overall. And yeah, like those games came out and they were not well received, and I think Ubisoft basically gave up on the IP. Now we circle around to what was basically 2024, and there was an independent studio who reached out to Ubisoft, and they said, "Hey, we know you have the IP for this series. We want to make a game." And I think at that point, Ubisoft didn't really care. They're like, "Yeah, sure, just do whatever you want." Like they gave them a few restrictions, but you now have a studio that wants to actually take the time to make one of these games and do it correctly. And everything that we've seen for the previews of this game looks like they know what they're doing. They're taking their time. They're taking community feedback. And we could have, after a long, long time, we could have something really special on our hands with the new Heroes of Might and Magic, The Olden Era. I am like very excited for this game. And as I said, I think they are doing everything right. The devs have been very active on social media and on their YouTube channel talking about stuff. And like, here's the video that they're just showing off like some of the units and stuff like that. But yeah, it looks like it has the potential to be absolutely incredible. It's going to be finally the successor to Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and 4. Again, Heroes, 5, 6, 7, I think, were the Ubisoft ones. We don't talk about those. And this one is actually going to be a prequel to 1, I believe. But yeah, can't wait to see what this game actually looks like. It's going to release into early access. And I don't do a lot of early access games, but I'm like 100% like in on what they're going to do with this one. I'm going to try and see if they've got... This video is kind of just like looking at the different units, but anybody who's played Heroes of Might and Magic, you know this, like, this view right here is what you're looking for, so... I like what they're doing with the Fog of War. And apparently there's like multiple different kinds of Fog of War that you can do. But yeah, the paper burning away thing is actually pretty cool. But yeah, there you go. Heroes of Might and Magic, the olden era. Very excited to jump into that and see what it's all about. So that, chat, is going to do it for what I have for categories. Now, normally in past years, we have then jumped into like top 5, top 7, top 10, and we work our way up to whatever the game of the year is going to be. This year is different. This year, I don't have a game of the year. And the reason for that is because to have a game of the year, you got to have one game that like really stands out. A game that you play it and you're like, man, this is the best game that's come out this year. I absolutely love it. It'll go down in my record books as this was my favorite game of, 2024. And I just didn't have that this year. There was a ton of great games, but none of them spoke to me as being the #1 contender. So instead, what I'm going to do is I have 4 games that I want to talk about, and these are my 4 favorite games of 2024, and these are not in any particular order. Like I said, I don't have a game of the year this year. So, and with these 4 games, I could argue a point for any of them being my game of the year, but again, I feel like none of them spoke highly enough to me to actually earn that title, I guess. So yeah. We'll go ahead and start with the first game that I want to talk about. And this is actually, for those who are watching this live on Twitch, this is going to be the game that we actually play later today. And that is, we are continuing the adventures in Dragon Age: The Veilguard. So it has been 10 years since BioWare has released a good game. And I know how some of you know how I feel about Inquisition. So I could even say it's been more than 10 years since they released a good game. And then we had Anthem in there that was a disaster. So what it comes down to is we finally have a new BioWare game. And what does BioWare look like in 2024? Like, does the BioWare format still work, right? And I would say that it does still work, and I feel like what they did with the Veilguard was very safe. Like, they didn't take a lot of risks. They almost went a little bit too simple with it. And I'll give you like one example. If you've played any of the other BioWare games, any of the previous Dragon Age games, any of the Mass Effect games, even like KOTOR or whatever, it's all about, oh, you're getting these companions and you're working on their relationships and all this and that. And it's just like natural that as part of whichever game or whichever story you're playing, you are helping out the companions, you're doing their stories, their side missions. Again, you're either liking what they do, not like what they do, maybe you're doing a romance, so forth and so on. There was a point in this game, in Veilguard, where it straight up just said, well, I guess we gotta go make all the companions happy if we're gonna do that. And I'm just like, that's not good writing. I don't know why you're doing that. It's like, and I've seen a lot of people say that the writing of this game is like a preteen novel. And I'm not really seeing that. I think for the most part, the writing is really solid. And I feel like right now I'm being overly negative on it, but that's not what I'm intending to do. This is a fantastic BioWare game. And I think the BioWare games do work in 2024 or 2025. It's definitely a new crew that made this game, again, compared to a lot of the other ones. So I feel like they have to sort of like tweak and refine what they're doing as they move into the next Mass Effect. And this is also a game that I have not beaten. I've had a lot of people tell me that the last, like, 5 hours, 4 hours, whatever, of this game are absolutely insanely incredible. And if I would have actually beaten this before we did this show, maybe it would have been my game of the year. I don't know. But it's a game that I'm thoroughly enjoying. I feel like I could argue that it actually does have the best combat system in all the Dragon Age games, but as I was saying earlier, every Dragon Age game is different with its combat, and so it's a little bit hard to compare them. Because, of course, Dragon Age 1 is like a CRPG, and 2 is more like an ARPG, and 3 is more like The Witcher, and then this one is kind of a hybrid between all three of them. So it almost comes down to, like, what combat style do you prefer? Do you like CRPG combat? Do you like ARPG? So forth and so on. But this combat style is super high action, a lot of fun. I'm playing a rogue, and I've actually heard a lot of people say that the mage is actually the most fun. So it's gonna be fun to try the mage at some point down the road. But yeah, being the rogue and like bouncing around, and I can do like this quick little teleport thing as my dodge, and you know, doing all the backstabs and all that stuff. It's like a very, very fun rogue gameplay to do. And they definitely stripped away some of the systems in this game. Some people are happy about that, some people are not. I wish they would have kept in more of the RPG elements, not only with the main character and the loot, but with the companions as well. Definitely makes the game a little bit simpler. For my open world RPGs or semi-open world RPGs, I like when they go like full in crazy with all the loot, all the gearing, and all that stuff. And this game just does things a tad different, but yeah, still incredibly fun. But yeah, just overall, it's good to see that BioWare can still make a good game. There was a lot of fears that if this game would have not been successful, that it could have been the doom for that studio, but I think they earned enough goodwill with this that we will see the next Mass Effect, and they've already confirmed that basically everybody's working on it. It's also going to be interesting to see what they do after Mass Effect. Like, do they do a new IP? Do they do the next Dragon Age? Because basically at the moment, BioWare is a 2-game studio, and so do they just keep rotating between those 2 games, or do they try another new IP? And funny enough, when we did the game draft here earlier this week, it actually came up as part of our game draft that BioWare was working on a new IP. I believe it was called Shadow Realms, and they just canceled that game for whatever reason. So, yeah, I wonder if they would try it again. And they do have more resources now that they don't have to deal with SWTOR. So, yeah, be interesting to see if they do indeed fully split off into 2 or 3 teams, or if they just kind of keep a team and a half, or, you know, what they end up doing. So, we'll have to see. But yeah, I'm glad that BioWare can still do it. We'll see what Mass Effect 5 looks like. It is 5, right? Yeah, 5. Yep. So, yeah, there you go, guys. Dragon Age, the Veilguard. All right, next game that I want to talk about is one of my favorite games of 2024. We must dispense democracy and freedom across the galaxy. This was definitely a surprise game for me as well. When they were showing trailers and previews for this game, I actually had zero interest in it. And then it came out, and everybody was playing it. Everybody was talking about it. Like, every once in a while, a game will come out, and it kind of takes over the internet, and that's exactly what happened with Helldivers 2. They completely nailed, like, everything that they were trying to do with this game. You know, they were definitely channeling their Starship Troopers. And what's funny is, at the same time that this game came out, there's also a Starship Troopers game that was in early access. I don't know if it's at 1.0 or not, but it's actually very similar to this. But so it's kind of funny that you had a game that was sort of mocking Starship Troopers, and then you actually have a, like, good Starship Troopers game that came out at the same time. So that's kind of crazy. But yeah, this is definitely a game that, like, a couple people in chat could jump in right now and be like, hey, you want to, like, jump into some Helldivers? And I'd be like, heck yeah. I can see it being a game that I play for a very, very long time. You just jump in, jump out, go kill some bugs or robots or whatever we're fighting. A couple of other things that this developer did that was really cool is they were kind of treating this game as a living, breathing open world. Almost like the developers of this game were, like, playing D&D with the players. Because there were a bunch of, like, articles that came out that, like, this game was, you know, obviously it's live all the time. You have to connect to their servers and all this and that. That, like, the developers would, like, get up in the middle of the night and all of a sudden, like, spawn in an event or creatures or whatever. And that happened all the time. Like, you'd log into the game and you'd be like, oh, I haven't played in, like, a week. And it's like, oh, interesting. So the robots took this system and the bugs took this system. And we took this system and this system. And, oh, wait, there's now an objective where they want all the players to work together to control this system. And if we're able to do it, it then unlocks something for everybody. It unlocks a factory. And then now that factory can build cars, which everybody will get access to. And so they've just done, like, an incredible job at making it like a living, breathing, like, universe, doing all these things. So, yeah, heck of a job at what they've done. They didn't do a perfect job. There was, like, a month or two after launch, they definitely ran into a few issues. But they've since then got those corrected. There were some balance issues for a while. Players were getting really mad at the devs because they kept nerfing everything. And it's like the devs just, like, they kept going, let's make it harder, let's make it harder, let's make it harder. So let's nerf this, let's nerf this. And it was actually really upsetting the players that they just kept nerfing everything. And yeah, it took them a little bit to find balance. But once they did, I think everybody's very, very happy with it. And then here, about a month ago, they introduced the new faction, and the new faction is really cool, and they introduced new maps and biomes. And actually, speaking of biomes, this is a beautiful-looking game. Like, it's actually crazy at how many different biomes or planets that are in the game. Like, right now here on the screen, we're, like, on a sandy, dusty world, but there's times where you're, like jumping down into, like, a beautiful green lush world, or you'll go to, like, something that's snowy or jungle or whatever. They just did, like, an awesome job with all the different planets. It's actually crazy on the sheer amount that they have, because you would think a game like this, it's like, oh, there's like 4, it's like, oh, sure, there's a lot of planets, but oh yeah, there's only like 4 biomes or whatever. And it's like, no, there's like way more biomes than that, which is pretty insane. So, yeah, heck of a job. We'll definitely be playing more Helldivers 2 down the road. So, cool stuff. The game's fantastic. Yeah, for those who are just jumping into chat, I'm not doing a Game of the Year this year. Instead, I have 4 games here at the end that I have chosen as just my favorite games of the year. So we are down to 2 more games I want to talk about. So the next game that I want to talk about is, again, one of my favorite games to come out in 2024. This is a game that was in development a very, very long time. It's a game that was designed in a very odd way. I don't think any game in the history of games has ever been designed like this game has. And so the game that I'm talking about is indeed Harold Halibut. So if you don't know the story of this game, what they actually did, and let me actually push this forward here for just a second here. I'm actually going to move to a slightly different scene so I can show you this just a tad better here. Of course, we're going to the bed scene here. Let me have the main character go back upstairs here for a second. But yeah, this game, let's pause right here for a second. This game was entirely handcrafted. I mean, this game was physically built. So basically, every scene in this game was literally hand sculpted. And then what they did is they took a camera in and they took pictures of the scene. So this is like a physical set that we are seeing on the screen that they then took pictures of, and then they pieced it together like, here's this room, next to that is this room, next to that is this room, up here is this room, so forth and so on. Then all of the characters were essentially, claymation is not quite the right word, but again, all of the characters were literally like handmade. They then put them into the computer and animated them and so forth and so on. So yeah, just a super interesting story on how this game was made. And you can actually go on YouTube and they've got some like little mini documentary things of them like actually like building the sets and stuff like that. But it's really, really cool. But no, this is a game that I have thought about a lot since I streamed it. And I streamed this game like 8 months ago. So this was a game for the spring that we did. But yeah, this is essentially a sci-fi world. And it just tells a very interesting story of a very humble main protagonist. And it's really hard to compare this game to like anything else that I've ever played. The entire game is essentially done from that side view. Like sometimes the camera will like spin around and like take you, you know, somewhere else in like a dimension that's kind of like this. But even when you kind of look at the game, it's hard to compare it to anything else that's kind of out there. I have some like minor issues with the main character's motivations on what he does in the story, or especially where he ends up in the story. But they did like an incredible job. Like the game is fully voice acted, and they did an incredible job with that. The writing and the characters are all very interesting because you're essentially on a spaceship that is in a contained deal. And I'm trying to like, for anybody who wants to play this, I'm trying to like not spoil things too much. But you're on this like massive spaceship that's in like this contained area, right? And so like the number of people that you can interact with is fairly light. And so it's like the game does a really good job of introducing the characters, and you get like a piece of their lives and that sort of thing as you're like going about your daily, you know, chores and whatnot. But no, just a very interesting world, a very interesting setting. Yeah, very interesting story. I love what they did with this game. And I feel like every time I do a Game of the Year show, I always have a game like this that is in my top 5. It's usually like in the number 2 spot if I'm doing like a Game of the Year list. You know, previously it was stuff like The Artful Escape and just these little oddball games that kind of come out of nowhere and yeah, do some really cool things. And funny enough, going back to the categories that I was doing earlier, I thought about doing a new category this year that was like best game that I played that was like an early access or a demo or something like that, because yeah, there were a lot of like just really solid indie games that came out this year that again are like in early access or whatever. So yeah, maybe in the future we'll add that category. But yeah, Harold Halibut. I think this game is on Game Pass, or at least it was. So yeah, if you're interested in trying out something different that actually has a really good story, definitely check this game out. I don't know how much it is on Steam, but yeah, that game is very, very cool and very, very unique. And then finally, everybody, to sort of wrap this thing up, the final game that I want to talk about as my top 4 favorite games of this year is the game that I streamed the most here on the channel in 2024. Agent Iron Spider and I had a great time with this. We were definitely getting frustrated by the final boss, and that is V Rising. Yeah, a game that I definitely want to go back, and I can see myself doing multiple playthroughs of down the road. I would love to do some like public server stuff with this game and try different settings. But yeah, for those who don't know, this game is essentially an open world RPG, or I should maybe even say an open world ARPG. But yeah, they did such an incredible job with this game. The main thing is the world itself. When you have this game running, it's a world that is definitely a living, breathing world. It's full of bosses. It's full of different factions, and the factions will actually interact with each other. So you'll have, let's say, some wolves or bears or spiders that are running around doing their thing, and you have a faction of like your standard humans, and they have guards and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the wolves will all of a sudden just go and attack the town or the guards or whatever. You'll see them fighting. And then right now I'm fighting a boss that I ran into. And so some of the bosses in the game are literally just walking around the world. It's like the boss will be part of one of the factions, like let's say the human soldier faction or whatever. And they'll be like based out of like, let's say one of the towns, and they'll like patrol a certain area. And then maybe as that boss is walking around, all of a sudden the boss runs into some skeletons, which you see on the screen right here. Or the wolves or bears or something will attack the boss. And I actually, when I was streaming this most recently, I actually came across 2 bosses that were both patrolling the road, and the bosses were of different, like a different faction or whatever. And so the 2 bosses started fighting each other. And I just kind of stand back and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to sit here and watch this. And I'm going to wait for both of you to get very low, and then I'm going to kill you. Which is pretty crazy. But yeah, the character you play is a custom character. You are indeed a vampire. You're actually a new vampire, and so you're like being resurrected or whatever. And the core of the game is about regaining essentially everything you lost, I guess. But yeah, you start out with nothing, and the game has a great leveling system, a great crafting system. There's resources everywhere. Like, you can cut down every single one of those trees. There's stones and that kind of thing, so you're like mining, and that all goes into the really good crafting system. So 95% of the gear in the game is crafted gear. It's like you are crafting better and better gear, and then there's like, off the top of my head, there's like, what, 10 different weapons? And you can kind of pick and choose, like, what kind of play style do you want to do, right? You're like, oh, I want to dual wield axes, or I want a, I want to dual wield pistols, or like this character here has got a big old 2-handed mace as an example. And you can essentially have multiple weapons on your character at any given time. And of course, you have different abilities, and there's kind of skill trees, although the way they do it in this game is a little bit different. You have, like, let's say fire, ice, shadow, that sort of thing, and you're unlocking abilities under those categories, and then you can say, okay, my vampire is going to be an ice vampire, and I'm going to take all the ice skills, and I'm going to wield dual pistols and do ice spells, you know. That's kind of how you customize your guy. Another thing that's absolutely fantastic is the base building. You literally, there's a ton of places across this world where you can build a base. And so you literally, like, you find a place and you stake your claim and you're like, all right, I'm going to build a base. And you literally are starting with, like, an old, like, I was going to say World War II, but that's, well, maybe World War II. But you're starting with, like, a basic, like, fort, essentially, like a log fort. And you can build all the way up to where you have this magnificent stone castle, and you have servants, and it's insane. And actually, speaking of servants, another incredible mechanic of this game is as you're walking around and you're finding these NPCs, all of the NPCs have their own stats. You can kind of see it in the center of the screen a little bit where I have my big health globe, and down below that it says 64%. So I sucked the blood of a NPC that had 64% blood purity, and that NPC was of a particular class. So I took all of the stats of that NPC when I drank their blood. So all of the NPCs across the entire game are randomized. And so one of the things that you look for as you're running around is you're looking for NPCs that have really high stats. Then what you can do is you can actually capture them and make them your servants. So this game just has a lot going for it. And as I mentioned a little bit ago about doing a public server, you can join a public server if you want to. You can host your own server. You can play this solo, or you can play it just co-op with your friends. You can actually buy your own server, which is essentially the same as like an MMO sub fee. So you can actually rent your own server for like $15 a month. That server is just on all the time, and the world is just doing its thing. And when Agent Iron Spider, Jalen and I played, that's actually what we did. We bought a server, and even though we were offline, the world was still doing its thing, which was absolutely crazy. It's going to be interesting to see if at some point down the road, if these developers do a V Rising 2. I think at the moment they're pretty content with continuing just to patch this game and adding more content to it. I don't know if this will get any like official expansions or anything like that, but no, this game is very, very cool. It's a game that you can put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours in. I mean, you could just spend so much time just gathering resources and doing the build. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, all of the bosses were really well designed. As I mentioned, Agent Iron Spider and I had a little bit of a trouble with the final boss. The final boss is very, very hard. But I should mention that you can make the game as hard or easy as you want it to be. So when you actually join a server or create your own server, or again, buy a server, you actually set the server rules. So you can choose like, okay, by default, my character has more health, or the enemies have less health, or when I collect resources, it actually collects like 10 times more resources than normal. So there's like a ton of server settings that you can mess with to make the world the way that you want it, which is really, really cool. But when we played, we basically just did default settings for like health and enemies and all that fun stuff. But I know a lot of people who played this game and they got to the final boss and they couldn't kill it. So actually right here's a great example where two bosses start fighting each other. So you've got this archer lady that I've been fighting, and we wandered into a wolf boss. And so now the wolf boss is fighting the archer boss, and I'm just standing back here being like, well, I've been fighting her this whole time. We're gonna let the two of them fight. But the archer lady is actually much, much higher level than the wolf boss. So she actually kills him, like, pretty quick. But still, the wolf does, like, enough damage to her that it actually helps me out. And now the wolf boss is dead, and now it's just me back with the archer lady that's, like, shooting me with stuff, so. No, this game is very, very cool. Yeah, I would love to get some of you in chat and have a bunch of us play this at the same time. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Do a big, like, community server of this. Like, I would buy another server, and we all jump in and play it together. We could even do a thing where we all have our own different castles and stuff like that. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is my Game of the Year show for 2024. Yeah, like I said, a little bit of a different format this year. We'll see what happens in 2025. But yeah, once again, just big thanks to everybody who supports me and all my content, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or you know, the card streams, which we started doing this year, or actually last year. Yeah, the card streams have been a lot of fun. We'll keep doing those. I'm probably going to back off on it a little bit. I've been talking with some people about potentially doing D&D here on the stream for the first time. We'll see if that actually happens. I'm not sure if it will or not. But yeah, really solid year of gaming for last year. A lot of really good stuff. But yeah, for those who are watching on YouTube, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.